Hey everybody. Well, there was an interview with Meet Kevin on his channel, the Meet Kevin channel, with Peter Schiiff. And I wasn't gonna watch this, but because it's about over 2 hours, almost 2.5 hours. But I was on a drive from LA to San Diego, and I figured, okay, now's a good time to listen to it. I was hoping to get some questions answered about maybe some sort of timeline on if and when there'll be an economic collapse. Of course, I'll just say this right up front. Spoiler alert. It was not revealed in this video if, or yes, they said there's going to be an economic collapse. Peter Schiiff specifically. The name of the video, Economic Collapse is Coming, confronting Peter Schiiff. That's how it was put out on Meet Kevin's channel. Now, it wasn't much of a confrontation. It wasn't really a debate. I mean, they weren't going back and forth. They weren't arguing that much, not hardly at all. It was very cordial. And it was a good interview. So let me try to save you some time here and go over a couple of the key points that Peter Schiff made. And I'm always looking for some sort of indication of when, if and when we're going to see this huge collapse that so many people have been predicting. The bottom line is, after listening to this whole interview, there's still no timeline because they can continue to kick the can down the road. And let me just bring up a couple of highlights here on at the points or the points that this particular question was raised. Right. So as I'm listening to this interview, I'm always listening for some sort of timeline, right? We know they can continue to kick the can down the road. They've done it for years. And we always say here, well, the longer they kick the can down the road, the worse it's going to be when it finally hits the fan. Well, let's go to a moment here where actually Kevin asks Peter Schiff directly, will there be another banking crisis? The answer is yes. But let's see if we can get some sort of timeline on it here.
So are we going to have another banking crisis? I mean, you've got a unique insight here. You were in banking, and I'm sure, the banking crisis happened within a month of the last time we were here. We had the Bank Term Funding Program that's coming to an end here on March 11th. So they say. Right.
Well, that's what I've been saying here as well. So they say this bank term funding, aka bailout program, is coming to an end in March. I've said here that maybe the rate cuts, they're talking about rate cuts because that's coming to an end. But I still doubt that it's coming to an end, and Peter Schiff agrees. Take a listen.
See, I think that needs to be followed up by a rate cut right away to hopefully prop up some of those bonds again. Otherwise, we'll walk into another banking crisis.
It's not just a rate cut.
What do you think?
They're probably going to go back to QE.
You think so?
Like, in March of last year, we would have had a worse financial crisis than 2008 had the Fed not stepped up. Now, that doesn't mean they did the right thing. They did the wrong thing. They should have allowed the crisis, because a worse crisis is going to result from the delay and what they did.
A worse crisis is going to result. We never find out when, because if they can kick the can down the road this time, why not the next time? Why not the next time? Why not the next time? That's what a lot of us are worried about. We're worried about a infinite kicking the can down the road, leading us into a hyperinflationary situation at some point, right? And I've said here, I would rather see deflation. I would rather see a collapse in falling prices versus this hyperinflation, which is the worst of the two scenarios, right? Well, let's take a listen here a little bit more. The question never gets answered as to when we'll see this. It's always at some point or an indefinite point we're going to see a collapse, but he never really comes out and says when. I don't think anybody knows when. But it is interesting to hear people that have been in this business or in economics for a long time, somebody like Peter. It's interesting to hear their take on it because they have a lot of experience.
The worst crisis is ahead of us than 2008.
Yes, and worse than what March would have been last year had we had it in March of last year, right? They always kick the can down the road because they'd rather have a problem tomorrow.
Stop. So if they always kick the can down the road, will we ever see this banking crisis finally come to a head and completely implode? Or will it just be never ending kicking the can down the road all the way into hyperinflation? Because the more you kick the can down the road, the more you keep bailing out the people, the depositors, the banks, everything, then the higher the cost of living goes because you never see any price corrections. You have to stop credit banks need to fail, loans need to stop being given out, people need to stop being able to borrow money and go further into debt if you ever want to control the cost of living and bring down inflation, aka the cost of living. But let's go ahead and listen a little bit more here. Then I've got a couple other spots in this interview I want to focus on, but take a listen to the rest of his answer here on will banks implode or will the banking crisis reemerge?
Even if it's a bigger problem tomorrow than a smaller problem today, because then it's somebody else's problem, right? But I think the banking system is completely insolvent in the United States. I think it is in much worse shape than it was in 2008 when it collapsed. And usually people will say, well, yeah, there's problems, but it's not like 2008. But they think it's not like 2008 because it's not as bad. It's actually not like 2008 because it's much worse. So there's two big real estate problems or problems the bank has. In 2008.
Okay. He goes on and talks about how much worse it is today. He talks about the underwater commercial real estate loans, which is tremendous. He goes and talks about mortgages. And again, if you want to listen to the full interview, it's 2-something hours. So better try to cut through the chase here. You never get an actual timeline or a date when this will happen. Could it happen this year? Of course it could. But if they had, just like he said, if they can continually kick the can down the road, and he said they always kick the can down the road, will this ever come to a head? Will we ever see the crisis?
The problem was mortgage loans that went into default. People stopped paying their mortgage.
All right, now let's take a listen to the next part that I want you to focus on. The question comes up basically, will there be more bailouts? And can they just keep doing this nonstop or endlessly? Take a listen here to this next segment.
So why not keep, or potentially as the Fed, the Ponzi going, so to speak? If the Fed starts lowering rates or at least signaling that rates come down, now losses at banks start evaporating, start reducing the cost of borrowing, maybe start reducing some of those credit defaults, which you mentioned debt and delinquencies are higher now.
Remember, the Fed can come in, they can, of course, cut rates, but they can also resume buying bonds and instead of quantitative tightening, quantitative easing. Basically taking the bad loans off of the book of the banks. Take a listen.
So it does seem like there's some unsustainability with the spending. Even just this morning, we saw, once again, lower inflation and PCE numbers, yet higher spending. So it seems like the Fed should be in this position of cutting. Is it just your position that that will create substantial inflation again? Or can we bail out the banks that way?
And remember that spending was financed in large part by a depletion of savings, which are already low. So it's more debt, it's more credit. But there's a reason that Ponzi schemes are illegal. and that's because they can't continue indefinitely. They always fall apart. So there's always people holding the bag.
They always fall apart. We don't know when. This could happen anytime, folks. I listened to this whole interview. We don't have an exact timeline. By the way it sounds, he's convinced that it's going to come down this year, but he doesn't give an exact trigger or something that would actually make this happen, suddenly. So it could be this year, it could be next year, it could be 10 years from now, right?
That end up losing money. And so, no, they can't keep the Ponzi going indefinitely because it's a Ponzi by definition. Now, governments can generally get away with it a lot longer than you and I could because they protect themselves. They kind of write the rules, but they can't, suspend the rules indefinitely. And the reason I think they can't really get away with it anymore is...
Right, so that was that part. To me, it seems like they can suspend the rules indefinitely. What's to stop the next round of rescues? What's to stop the freezing of or the stoppage of foreclosures, the stoppage of evictions, the like they did in 2020, they stopped utility payments for a while, so people got income back, and then if they didn't get income back, they had enhanced unemployment benefits, they had stimulus checks, all this money pushed out into the economy. Let's go to the next segment, though, the next portion of this interview I wanted to focus on here. All right, now let's take a listen to some pretty confusing confusing forecast on the housing market. So the dollar is going to go down, so he says, which is going to make real estate prices go up because the dollar goes down, costs go up, inflation goes up, a devalue of the dollar. But at the same time, we hear that there's going to be a real estate crash and falling prices, right? Take a listen here.
You're going to pay maybe 6.5, 7, which is still probably a decent rate. But it's not like it was. But yeah, I mean, people could still buy property if it pencils out right, the values that are there. But I think the market is overpriced. And in real terms,
he says the market is overpriced, indicating the real estate bubble, indicating that there should be falling prices down the road, but maybe not. Take a listen.
Right. If you want to think about how much gold do you need to buy,
Peter, he's always going to connect it with gold somehow, right?
A house.
Sure.
You're going to be able to buy a lot more house with your gold in the future. You won't need as much gold to buy the house, because in those real terms, it's going to come down.
Oh, that's because you think gold prices will go up, not because you think real estate prices will come down.
Well, it's because I think the value of the dollar is going to go down.
I see.
And as the value of the dollar goes down, the price of everything else goes up.
Okay.
The price of everything else goes up. So if he's right about the dollar coming down, real estate's going to go up more. It's just crazy, right?
So the value of homes denominated in dollars would actually go up.
Right, but not up, not up as much as in gold.
Okay.
And so that really shows you that the real price of real estate is going down, even as the nominal price is going up. But
all right, so here's what he's saying. The real price of real estate will go down compared to gold, because gold will go up more, but home prices are still going to go up because of the weakness of the dollar, folks. You see, it's so difficult to find a clear prediction. I've tried to give my best indicators here, predictions here, things to look out for. What do you think about this interview? People that have been in the game for decades really have no idea. And this is not criticizing anybody. Obviously, Kevin from Meet Kevin, he's asking Peter these questions because he wants to get some insight. I highly respect him, and it's nothing against him. No economist, no person knows exactly when this ball game ends. I've always said here it's going to be some sort of big situation that pops up here to bring things down. 2020, we had a complete shutdown of the economy. Did we see falling prices and the cost of living come down? No, we saw it actually explode higher because of all the programs that came after the crisis. So will the same thing happen in the next crisis? I think yes. I think they're always going to try to come in and patch things up and prevent deflation. I don't think the powers that be, I don't think the bankers that run the economy, I don't think they want deflation. I think they'd rather see inflation, because that way they can point to quote unquote economic growth because of all the spending, even though the spending is people taking on debt, spending money that was handed out to them, etc. Right? So where does this end, folks? You let me know. If you watched this interview, let me know what you think about your thoughts of it. Just too much in there to unpack, 2.5 hours. But I just thought I'd bring you this analysis here because I was hoping to get some information out of that interview. I did learn some things, absolutely. But as far as the timeline, we still don't know. I still think 2024, we're going to see some major things pop off here. We think we need to be ready. I think we need to be ready. 30 days emergency, food, water, essentials out of the system, cash, just in case, something big actually pops off, so to speak, at once. We're talking about a big crisis where the entire system goes dark. Maybe the system gets compromised, hacked, taken down, some sort of act of war on U.S. soil. One of these big things that really can really bring the entire system to a halt, right? So that's my opinion here. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments. Hope you guys like this. Please give us a like, subscribe if you like what we talk about here. And we'll talk to you very soon now, everybody. Bye.